everyone, my name is Clementin from Workshop Training Course, and today in this video I will bring one topic discussing 5 tips for students to speak fluently. So if you're teachers, these tips can be guidance for you to help your students to speak English fluently. But before moving on to the discussion, let me ask you one question. Do you have any students, these kinds of students, like a student who is too shy to speak or a student who is too confused with their mind so that they do not know what to speak and they do not know how to speak? If your answer is yes, then imagine that one day your students comes to you and ask for your help. So what will you do? As teachers, I will suggest you to help them well because speaking is also important. Why? Why speaking is important? So let us read one quote from Frank Smith. If you are teaching language, then you have to make sure that your student have the ability to speak with that language. You have to make sure that your students have the ability to be the community of the speakers of that language, because this is the purpose of learning a new language. So speaking is very important. That's why we have to motivate our students to speak. Okay, so yes, this is the reason why the tips will be very important for you. And let's go to the first tip. One, don't be afraid of making mistakes. Yes, we have to remind our students that making mistakes are normal. But as teachers, you have to remember that you have to take this into action. You cannot take this only as a saying. So what does it mean? It means if you find that your students make mistakes, please don't be mad, please don't be angry. Yes, I am sure that the grammar is important and we cannot leave it behind. But instead of judging them, instead of being mad with them, then we can repeat their sentence and we can correct it directly. So in this case, we still show that they made mistakes without judging them. For example, when a student comes to you and says, I go to the zoo last weekend, and you can reply by, wow, you went to the zoo last weekend. So, how was it? Was it fun? Okay. Here we are talking about speaking, so our focus is speaking. And also your focus, the focus of your students is also speaking. So they want to speak with you. That's why you have to remember that the focus is speaking. Do not focus on their grammar. But while talking with them, you can show that they make mistakes by repeating, by correcting their sentences. The next is listen and imitate. So here you can ask your students to listen to whatever they like. For example, if your students like listening to music, then you may ask to sing a song, to sing the song that they really like and sing along with their favorite singers. But if your students like watching movie, then you may ask them to imitate the subtitles. For example, Harry Potter. You may ask your students to imitate the subtitles of Harry Potter, which is in British. Yes, it will be very difficult, but if your students like it, enjoy it, then those problems, those difficulties will not be a big problem for them. The next is talk to yourself. So the third tip is not about you yourself, but it's about your students. You may advise your students, suggest your students to talk to themselves. It is not strange at all. That's why you have suggested them with some ideas so that they do not lose their mind. They can keep themselves still on the track. For example, you may ask them to record their days orally. Like for example, I woke up at 5 this morning and then I had breakfast and then I prepared all stuffs for my online learning and blah 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 blah. So instead of writing journals, your students can record their days at the end of the day by speaking it, by saying it to themselves. And then you may ask your students to respond to their favorite podcast. If your students like listening to podcasts, then you may ask them to respond. So not imitate but responding. In podcasts, sometimes the speakers ask questions to the listeners, such as, have you ever blah blah blah. Do you know about this? What do you think about that? And what will you do if you become this? Okay, so your students can train themselves by answering those questions coming from the speakers. And the third is preparing for specific situations. Here you may ask your students to imagine that, for example, they are in a shop, they want to buy one thing but they cannot find it. So what will they say? What will they speak to the shop assistant so that they can get a help to find that thing? Okay, actually, the tip on number two and number three can be done at home. You know that, yes, I'm sure that teachers nowadays give a lot of speaking exercises for the students inside the class. But what happened outside the class? Will all students still speak using English? Are you sure? What if your students do not have any interlocutors? So yeah, this is the answers. They can still keep speaking English without interlocutors by talking to themselves or imitating the song of the movie, the subtitles of the movie that they like. Four is tongue twister. Here, if your students are still children and they cannot find the tongue twister by themselves, then you may give one sentence in a week for your students. You may give one tongue twister to them and then ask them to practice it within a week. And after that, when you meet them again, you may ask them to rate the tongue twister that you have given. And the fifth is celebrate success. So if you have given the suggestion, if you have suggested some activities, then it is your responsibility to follow up their progress. If you see that they make a progress, although a little progress, then you have to appreciate their effort. Because when you are appreciating their effort, they will be more motivated. So yeah, this fifth tips, this one cannot be missed. So you have to do this also. Okay, done. So those are the five tips that I can give to you. And to bring it in the summary, then I will take one quote from Deborah saying that teaching is listening and learning is talking. It means if you're teaching language and if you want your students to really learn, then let them speak. Let them be brave to speak whatever they want. And please don't be irritated with their mistakes because mistakes are normal. Even the teachers still sometimes still make mistakes when they are speaking. And yeah, that's all. Thank you. I hope the tips are useful for you and your students. And if you have any questions, then you may ask in the discussion session. Bye bye.